If this story found you tonight, slow down. You're safe here. Part 1. The First Snow. The morning arrived with a hush, as if the city itself were holding its breath. Through the frost-etched windows of the bookshop on Marchmont Street, the world appeared transformed, softened by the season's first true snowfall. Each flake descended with deliberate grace, settling upon the cobblestones like whispered secrets, muffling the usual cacophony of London's restless streets into something approaching peace. Inside the shop, Mr. Sebastian Finch stood motionless, his slight frame silhouetted against the pale morning light. His fingers, stained perpetually with ink despite his most diligent scrubbing, rested gently upon the windowsill. He was a man of perhaps 50 years, though the lines around his eyes spoke more of laughter and reading by candlelight than of hardship. His hair, once dark as printer's ink, had begun to silver at the temples, giving him the distinguished appearance of a scholar, which, in his own quiet way, he supposed he was. The shop itself was a marvel of organized chaos. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling on every wall, each one bowing slightly under the weight of volumes accumulated over 3 decades of patient collecting. There were books on natural philosophy and ancient history, volumes of poetry bound in cracked leather, atlases with hand-colored maps of lands both real and imagined, novels whose pages had been turned by countless eager hands, and treatises on subjects so obscure that Mr. Finch himself sometimes forgot he possessed them. The morning ritual began, as it always did, with the lighting of the lamps. Mr. Finch moved through the shop with the practiced ease of a man navigating his own mind, touching a match to each oil lamp in turn. The flames caught and bloomed, casting pools of golden light that pushed back the winter gloom. The shop seemed to wake with each new flame, as if the books themselves were stirring from slumber, ready to share their treasures with whoever might seek them. Next came the fire. The small iron stove in the corner had been banked overnight, its coals still holding a faint warmth. Mr. Finch knelt before it, his knees protesting with a gentle creak that echoed the complaint of the old floorboards. He added kindling first, then small logs of applewood that would fill the shop with a subtle, sweet fragrance as they burned. The fire caught quickly, eager for life, and soon the stove radiated a comforting heat that spread through the room in invisible waves. With the shop properly awakened, Mr. Finch turned his attention to the kettle. Tea was not merely a beverage, but a companion, a comfort, a small ritual that marked the transition from night to day. He measured the leaves carefully, a blend he had discovered years ago in a small shop in Cheapside, then poured water heated to just below boiling. As the tea steeped, releasing its earthy aroma, he allowed himself to simply stand and breathe, to exist in this moment of quiet preparation before the day truly began. The first customer would not arrive for another hour, he knew. The snow would keep many at home, and those who did venture out would move slowly, carefully. This suited Mr. Finch perfectly. He poured his tea into a chipped porcelain cup, its pattern of blue flowers faded but still visible, and settled into the chair behind his counter. From his waistcoat pocket, he withdrew a small volume, bound in green cloth, its title worn to illegibility. He did not need to see the title. He knew this book by heart, had read it dozens of times, yet each reading revealed something new, some nuance previously overlooked. The book was a collection of essays by a writer of no particular fame, a woman who had lived a century before and written about ordinary things, the changing of seasons, the behavior of birds, the pleasure of a well-tended garden. Her prose was clear as stream water, unpretentious yet profound in its attention to detail. Mr. Finch found in her words a kinship, a shared understanding that the extraordinary often hides within the ordinary, waiting to be noticed by those patient enough to look. He was deep in an essay about winter robins when the bell above the door chimed, startling him from his reverie. Snow swirled in with the visitor, a woman of middle years wrapped in a dark cloak, her cheeks pink from the cold. She stamped her feet gently on the mat, snow cascading from her boots, and looked around with an expression that Mr. Finch had learned to recognize, the wide-eyed wonder of someone encountering the shop for the first time. "Good morning," Mr. Finch said. rising from his chair with his book still in hand. "Welcome. Please, come in from the cold." The woman smiled, though there was a hesitancy in it, as if she were not quite certain she belonged in such a place. "Good morning. I hope I'm not intruding. I was walking past and I saw your light, and I thought—" She trailed off, her gaze traveling along the shelves. "You are most welcome, mister," Finch assured her, setting his book aside. "A bookshop is meant to be a refuge, particularly on a morning such as this. Are you seeking something particular, or would you prefer to simply browse?" "I'm not entirely sure," the woman admitted, unwinding her scarf. "My daughter is unwell. Nothing serious, but she's confined to bed for a few days. I thought a new book might lift her spirits." Mr. Finch nodded, understanding immediately. "How old is your daughter?" 12. She's at that age where she's no longer quite a child, but not yet ready for entirely grown-up concerns. It's difficult to know what might engage her." 12 is a wonderful age for reading, mister," Finch said, moving toward a particular section of the shop. "Old enough to appreciate complexity, young enough to still believe in possibility. Does she have any particular interests?" The woman followed him, her eyes lighting up as she spoke of her daughter. "She loves nature, anything to do with animals or growing things. We have a small garden, and she tends it with such care. Last summer, she raised a bird with a broken wing until it could fly again." Mr. Finch felt a warmth spread through his chest, the particular pleasure of matching the right book to the right reader. He ran his fingers along a shelf, then withdrew a volume bound in brown cloth, illustrated with delicate drawings of plants and creatures. "This," he said, holding it out, "is a naturalist's journal, written by a young woman who traveled through the countryside documenting what she observed. It's part science, part adventure, part philosophy. The illustrations alone are worth the price, but the writing is quite special. She had a gift for making you see the world through fresh eyes." The woman took the book carefully, opening it to a random page. Mr. Finch watched as her expression softened, saw the moment when she knew this was the right choice. She looked up at him with genuine gratitude. "It's perfect. She'll treasure this." As Mr. Finch wrapped the book in brown paper, tying it with twine, the woman spoke again. "You have a gift, Mr. Finch. Sebastian Finch. Mr. Finch, you have a gift for understanding what people need. This shop, it feels different from others I've visited. There's a kindness here." After she left, the bell chiming her farewell, Mr. Finch returned to his chair and his tea, now cooled but still comforting. The woman's words stayed with him, warming him more than the fire. This was why he had opened the shop all those years ago, why he continued despite the modest income and long hours. Not for profit or prestige, but for these small moments of connection, for the privilege of being a guide in others' literary journeys. Part 2. The Afternoon Visitor. The day progressed in its gentle way, measured not by the ticking of the clock, but by the comings and goings of customers and the slow journey of the sun across the sky. By afternoon, the snow had stopped, leaving the city blanketed in white. The shop remained warm, the fire crackling steadily, creating an atmosphere that felt removed from time itself, a pocket of permanence in a changing world. Mr. Finch was shelving a new arrival, a collection of medieval poetry that had come in with the morning post when he heard the bell again. He turned to see a young man entering, perhaps 25 years of age, with the unmistakable bearing of a university student. His coat, though well made, showed signs of wear, and he carried a leather satchel bulging with papers and books. His eyes, bright and intelligent behind wire-rimmed spectacles, immediately began scanning the shelves with an intensity that suggested desperation. "May I help you find something?" Mr. Finch asked, descending from the small ladder he'd been using. The young man started slightly, as if he'd forgotten anyone else existed. "Yes, actually. I'm looking for a very specific text. I've tried every bookshop in London, or so it feels. My thesis supervisor mentioned a book, quite rare, about medieval illuminated manuscripts. The author is one, Father Benedict Ashworth, published sometime in the 1842. It's called The Art of Sacred Letters, or something similar. Mr. Finch felt a flicker of recognition. He knew the book, had acquired it years ago from an estate sale. But where had he shelved it? He stood still for a moment, eyes closed, mentally walking through his inventory. Then he moved, not toward the obvious section on medieval studies, but to a corner near the back window where he kept books on artistic techniques. "Father Benedict Ashworth," Mr. Finch murmured, running his finger along the spines. "Yes, I believe I have something." He withdrew a slim volume, its burgundy binding faded to a dusty rose. "Here. The Sacred Art of Illumination. A study in medieval manuscript decoration. Is this what you're seeking?" The young man's face transformed, disbelief giving way to joy. He took the book as if it were a holy relic, opening it with trembling hands. "This is it! This is exactly it! I've been searching for weeks. Where was it classified?" "Under artistic techniques rather than medieval studies," Mr. Finch explained. Father Ashworth approached the subject from a practitioner's perspective rather than a purely historical one. "I thought it belonged with books on actual technique." The young man looked up from the book, his expression one of profound respect. "That's brilliant. I would never have thought to look there." He paused, then added with refreshing honesty, "I can't afford to purchase it. Not at the moment. I'm a student, and my stipend barely covers rent and meals. But if you'd consider holding it for me, I could save up over the next few months." Mr. Finch considered this. The book was valuable, certainly, and rare. In purely commercial terms, he should perhaps wait for a buyer with ready funds. But he looked at the young man's face, saw the hunger for knowledge there, the earnest dedication, and made his decision. "Take it now," he said. "Pay me what you can, when you can. The book wants to be read, not to sit on my shelf collecting dust." The young man stared at him. "I couldn't possibly." "You can, and you will," Mr. Finch said firmly but kindly. "I was once a student myself, passionate about learning, perpetually short of funds. Someone showed me kindness then. Consider this kindness passed forward." He named a price that was far less than the book's worth, then added, "Pay half now if you can manage it, and the rest whenever your finances allow. No interest, no urgency." After the young man left, practically floating with happiness and gratitude, clutching the book as if it might vanish, Mr. Finch returned to his chair. The afternoon light was beginning to fade, the shop growing dimmer despite the lamps. He poured himself another cup of tea from the pot he'd refreshed an hour earlier, and allowed himself a moment of reflection. The shop would never make him wealthy. There were months when he barely covered his expenses. But wealth, he had long ago decided, could be measured in many ways. The look on that young scholar's face was worth more than gold. The knowledge that somewhere in London, a 12-year-old girl was discovering the wonder of nature writing that was treasure beyond counting. Part 3. The Evening's Gift. As twilight descended, Mr. Finch began his closing routine. He banked the fire, turned down the lamps, and tidied the counter. The shop took on a different character in the evening, the shadows deepening, the silence becoming more profound. It was his favorite time of day, this transition from the public space of commerce to the private sanctuary of his own company. He was about to lock the door when he noticed something odd. On one of the lower shelves, tucked back almost out of sight, was a book he did not recognize. Its binding was simple black cloth, with no title visible on the spine. Curious, Mr. Finch pulled it out and opened it. Inside, on the flyleaf, was an inscription in an elegant hand. "For Sebastian Finch, who understands that the greatest stories are the ones we live. With gratitude for kindness shown to a desperate student. Many years ago." Mr. Finch's breath caught. He turned the page and began to read. It was a novel, unpublished, written in a clear, confident hand. The story was set in a bookshop, much like his own, and the protagonist was a bookseller who touched the lives of his customers in small but profound ways. As he read, Mr. Finch realized with growing wonder that this was a gift, left by someone he had once helped, now successful enough to give back in the only way that truly mattered, through story.
He could not identify who had left it. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the author's name a pseudonym, but that did not matter.
What mattered was the gesture itself, the acknowledgement that kindness creates ripples that spread far beyond the initial act. Mr. Finch carried the manuscript to his chair by the dying fire. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent. He opened the book to the first page and began to read, allowing himself to be carried away by the words, by the story of a life much like his own, rendered beautiful and meaningful on the page.
Part 4. The Long Night. Hours passed in that peculiar way they do when one is absorbed in reading, time becoming fluid, irrelevant. Mr. Finch read through the evening and into the night, occasionally rising to add more coal to the stove or to make himself another cup of tea. The manuscript was extraordinary, not because it contained dramatic events or shocking revelations, but because it understood something fundamental, that ordinary lives, lived with attention and care, contain all the drama and beauty anyone could ask for. The protagonist of the story was a bookseller named Thomas Gray, a widower who had devoted his life to his shop after the death of his wife. Through a series of interconnected chapters, the novel showed how Thomas's small acts of kindness, his careful recommendations, his willingness to listen, created a web of connection that sustained an entire community. There was the lonely widow who found solace in poetry, the struggling artist who discovered inspiration in an old art book, the child who learned to read with books Thomas selected specifically for her, the elderly professor who found a friend in Thomas after years of isolation. As Mr. Finch read, he found himself deeply moved. The book was, in many ways, a mirror held up to his own life. He, too, had lost a wife, many years ago now, before they'd had children, before they'd had the chance to build the life they'd dreamed of. He, too, had poured his grief and love into this shop, into these books, into the people who passed through his door. He had never thought of himself as doing anything particularly special, but this book suggested otherwise. It suggested that attention itself was a form of love, that bearing witness to others' needs and joys was a kind of ministry. There was a chapter near the end that particularly struck him. In it, Thomas Gray was visited by a former customer, now an old woman, who wanted to thank him. Years ago, she explained, she had come to his shop desperate and alone, recently arrived in the city with no friends and little hope. Thomas had recommended a book to her, had spoken to her with genuine interest and kindness, and that small interaction had given her the courage to continue. She had gone on to build a life, to find community, to thrive, and she had never forgotten the bookseller who had seen her, truly seen her, when she felt invisible. Mr. Finch set the manuscript down for a moment, his eyes blurred with tears. How many times had he done something similar? How many small interactions, forgotten by him within days, might have meant everything to someone else? The thought was humbling and beautiful all at once. He finished the manuscript as the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows. The snow had stopped again, and the city was beginning to stir, preparing for a new day. Mr. Finch closed the book and sat quietly, feeling a profound sense of gratitude, of completion.
Part 5. The morning after. Mr. Finch did not sleep. Instead, he made himself a proper breakfast, something he often neglected, taking the time to prepare eggs and toast, to brew a fresh pot of tea. He ate slowly, thoughtfully, watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered rooftops in shades of pink and gold. When it was time to open the shop, he felt refreshed despite his sleepless night, energized by a renewed sense of purpose. As he went through his morning routine, lighting the lamps and stoking the fire, he found himself noticing details he usually overlooked.
the way the light caught the gilt letters on certain spines, the particular scent of old leather mixed with wood smoke, the satisfying weight of a well-made book in his hands. The day brought its usual mix of customers. An elderly gentleman seeking a book on fly fishing to read during his convalescence. A young mother looking for fairy tales to read to her children. A scholar researching the history of printing presses. To each, Mr. Finch gave his full attention, not merely helping them find books, but truly listening, understanding what they needed, even when they themselves did not quite know. At midday, the young scholar from the day before returned, looking slightly embarrassed. He approached the counter, where Mr. Finch was cataloging new arrivals. Mr. Finch, I wanted to thank you again for your kindness yesterday. I spent all night reading Father Ashworth's book, and it's exactly what I needed for my thesis. But I also wanted to tell you something. He paused, gathering courage. I was the one who left the manuscript. Mr. Finch looked up, surprised. You wrote that? The young man nodded. Not just me. It was a collaborative effort. 5 years ago, when I was an undergraduate, I came to your shop looking for a book I couldn't afford. You let me have it for almost nothing, told me to pay you back when I could. That kindness changed my life, Mr. Finch. It sounds dramatic, but it's true. That book, your generosity, it gave me the confidence to continue my studies when I was ready to give up. He continued, his words coming faster now. I told my friends about you, other students you'd helped over the years. We found a dozen people, Mr. Finch, a dozen people whose lives you'd touched. We all contributed stories, memories, and I wove them together into that novel. It's not just fiction. It's a thank you. It's an acknowledgement of who you are and what you've done. Mr. Finch found himself unable to speak for a moment. Finally, he managed. I never knew. I never thought. That's precisely why we wanted to tell you, the young man said gently. Because you do these things without thought of recognition or reward. You do them because it's who you are. But we wanted you to know that you've been seen, that your kindness has mattered, that it has created ripples you never knew about. After the young man left, having pressed an envelope containing the remainder of the payment into Mr. Finch's hand despite his protests, Mr. Finch sat at his counter and allowed the tears to come. They were not tears of sadness but of profound joy, of gratitude, of a kind of validation he had not known he needed. Epilogue. The story continues. The winter deepened, then gradually gave way to spring. The snow melted, revealing the world beneath, and London burst into bloom. Mr. Finch continued his work, day after day, helping readers find the books they needed, the stories that would sustain them, challenge them, comfort them. The manuscript remained in his shop, not on a shelf, but in his desk drawer, where he could take it out and read passages when he needed reminding of why he did this work. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he would read sections aloud to himself, marveling at how his ordinary life had been transformed into something beautiful on the page. New customers came, and familiar ones returned. Each brought their own stories, their own needs and dreams, and Mr. Finch met each one with the same patient attention, the same gentle guidance, the same fundamental belief that books were not mere objects but vessels of connection, bridges between souls. Years later, long after Mr. Finch had passed on, and the shop had been taken over by a young woman who had once been a regular customer, people still spoke of the bookseller of Marchmont Street. They told stories of his kindness, his wisdom, his uncanny ability to match the right book to the right person at the right moment. The manuscript was published, eventually, under the young scholar's name, and it became a modest success, beloved by those who understood that the most powerful stories are often the quietest ones. In the dedication, the author wrote simply, "For Sebastian Finch, who taught me that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." And in bookshops across the city, on quiet afternoons when the light slants through dusty windows and the smell of old paper mingles with tea, booksellers continue the work that Mr. Finch exemplified, the work of connection, of care, of recognizing that every customer who walks through the door is not just seeking a book, but seeking to be seen, to be understood, to find their place in the great conversation that books facilitate.
The end. And now, dear listener, our story draws to a close. Like Mr. Finch at the end of his day, we too must turn down the lamps and bank the fire. The shop will be there tomorrow, the books waiting patiently on their shelves, ready for new readers, new stories, new connections. As you drift into sleep, carry with you the warmth of that small bookshop, the comfort of knowing that kindness matters, that attention is a gift, that the ordinary moments of our lives contain all the meaning we need. Let these thoughts be soft pillows for your dreaming mind. Rest well, dear friend, until we meet again in another story, in another quiet corner where imagination and peace intertwine. Good night.
Thank you for listening and for spending this quiet moment with me. If this story brought you comfort, you're always welcome to return. New, gentle stories are waiting for you here on Soft Voice Night. You can follow the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next peaceful night. Rest well, sleep deeply, and I'll see you again very soon. Good night.